Recently, a character in a home game I run died. Not the player, he's fine, but his ranger PC was unfortunately chewed up by a cave fisher. As this was the first death in this campaign and the player's first ever PC death, I pulled him aside after the session and asked him how he wanted to handle it. I told him he could roll up a new character, or he could play a temporary character while the group went on a mission to bring back the PC, which would be necessary since they were too low level to have the kind of magic to simply cast Revivify or Raise Dead. The player was fine with rolling up a new character. He even said, "This is a game and it seems like a natural consequence for dying." But the thing was, the rest of the group wanted to save his PC. And from a certain in-world perspective, it seems logical to leave the decision up to them anyway, since they're the ones who would have to go questing for him. I won't go into all the gory details about the side adventure they went on, but I will say a few things about it. I wanted it to be difficult, and make it clear it was not guaranteed they could succeed in this task. This campaign takes place in a low magic world, so they can't just walk into the nearest church and ask someone for a favor. I put them through the ringer of going on a lengthy journey to acquire various MacGuffins, which ultimately ended with them at a temple having satisfied the requirements. And here's the meat of my story. After this multi-session detour, I didn't want the ending to be anticlimactic by just having the holy person they asked for aid simply cast a spell and be done with it. I wanted it to be an encounter. And I didn't want to steal Matt Mercer's somber method of having everyone gather around and perform a version of a skill challenge like ceremony. So here's what I did. Once they had met the requirements to earn a Raise Dead spell, they met with a holy person who explained that the resurrection process would be dangerous. After the Raiser starts casting, the quote-unquote death would leave their friend's body, but it would try to kill him again to get back in. Death does not want to leave, so they would have to face off against it. You asked what was involved. So what's going to happen is after you sign those waivers, of course, that's non-negotiable. We'll go back to where your friend is being stored in the cold storage. We'll pull him out. I will begin the ritual. The ritual itself is actually quite simple. It's just a regular Raise Dead spell. And the spell itself is not dangerous. The dangerous part comes in that once I cast the spell, the death will leave his body. But the thing about the death is that it doesn't want to leave, and it will try to get back in and kill him again. And if it kills him again, it's done. You can't bring him back again. So while I'm performing the ritual, it will be your job to keep your friend Shelby alive, and me, in case the death tries to come after me, because I will be focused on the spell. Does that make sense? I know my Australian accent isn't great. Anyway, the Raiser also told them that they should focus on keeping their friend alive. I stressed to them that it wasn't necessarily a simple combat encounter, that it would be closer to a skill challenge. They had to keep the raised person alive for 30 seconds or 5 rounds of an encounter to succeed. So the ritual started. The holy person cast the spell, and a plume of death expelled from the body. I described it as a humanoid-shaped black cloud that hovered above this ranger PC, and I was using the Banshee stat block for resistances and immunities. The death creature immediately put its spectral hands around the newly alived PC's throat, trying to strangle him and take him back. The ranger had 1 hit point. Each round, the death creature would make 2 melee attacks against this poor PC, knocking him unconscious with the first, and then adding 2 failed death saves with the auto crits on the second. I had been a little bit vague with the group about how they were supposed to succeed, because I wanted them to experiment with spells, attacks, and skill checks to figure out how to counter this thing. The party's cleric focused on casting Cure Wounds on the downed PC. The party's monk tried a few things in vain, like using a spider staff to web the death creature, but the web passed right through it. The paladin attempted to cast Command and Compelled Duel on the death creature with mixed results. After a few rounds, the struggle was growing tense. The cleric had run low on spell slots to keep healing the downed ranger each turn. The monk came up with a creative solution of throwing his body atop the downed ranger, and he started taking half of the damage from each of the creature's attacks. Ultimately, they did end up keeping the ranger alive for 5 full rounds, after which the death creature faded away and the encounter ended. The party was whole again. And more importantly, the players enjoy the experience. And most importantly, they felt like the resurrection had been earned through their labor, from the sweat of their brows. It made the impression on them that death isn't necessarily the end, but it's something to be treated seriously, since the resurrection quest derailed their previous plans for multiple sessions, and at no point had it been guaranteed to work. I put the question of how to handle resurrection to the D&D community in the form of a poll, and surprisingly, the results were that many or most of you have never faced this situation. I get that, I'm a big softie too, and I rarely kill PCs. Like I said, it was the first time it had happened in this campaign. First time at all for this particular group, and I've been DMing them for more than 2 years straight at this point. I've played in some campaigns where PC death is a regular occurrence. In a Dungeon of the Mad Mage campaign, every level of the dungeon has a mini-boss, and the DM averaged about 1 PC death per boss battle. It became a lot harder to kill us at higher levels, and after I lost my first PC, I built my second PC to be way more difficult to kill. He was a warlock, and I gave him lots of escape methods like Dimension Door, the Warlock Invocations, Trickster's Escape, and Tomb of Levistus, and most critically, a flying speed. Flying PCs are much harder to bring down. Anywho, I've gotten off track here. Let's talk about some other methods how to handle death and rebirth in D&D to make it feel like a more significant experience. One way you can add depth and difficulty to a resurrection procedure is to add an element of sacrifice to it. Not like killing a goat, although you can do that if you want, no judgment. I mean sacrifice in that it costs the PC something to get their dead friend back. You could go with the obvious method of gold because it requires diamonds to do Revivify, Raise Dead, and Resurrection. But you could add a gold cost on top of that, especially if the ritual is being performed by someone outside of the party. The components alone give you some control over the availability of the spell, since you could make diamonds hard to find in your world if you want. But you could also make it more meaningful by adding a wrinkle to your campaign that requires the person casting the spell to destroy a magic item. Maybe in your campaign, the gods require a magical sacrifice to allow the dead to return to your plane. You can always come up with an in-game reason why it's necessary, but the point here is that it has to be something meaningful, something they don't want to part with. You could also borrow an element from The Wild Beyond the Witchlight that I really liked. In the Feywild, there are these creatures who steal and collect memories in a bottle. Maybe in your world, to bring someone back from the dead, you have to sacrifice an important core memory for your character, and that empowers the spell. Shades of 1,000-year-old vampire here. Anyway, the greater the memory sacrificed, the easier the resurrection will be. Doesn't have to be a memory though, it could be a class ability or knowledge of a spell, or taking a penalty to an ability score, depending on how hardcore you want to be. How bad do they want this? Another method is to designate specific areas in the world where resurrection is possible. This is sort of a holy ground rule. Can't raise your dead friend here, buckaroos, you're gonna have to lug him to the top of Mount Schmergenbergen. So you make your party cart around that dead half-orc barbarian on a journey across the continent to reach the special shrine of Bjorkenschmorken where the spell can be cast. And they of course face hardships along the way, putting success at risk. Unless the party has the gentle repose spell to extend the 10-day grace period for Raise Dead, you could turn this into a tense race against time to reach the special location. Above all, the point with these complications for raising and resurrecting dead allies is not to force PCs to stay dead by making it impossible or nearly impossible to win. If that's what you want, make it clear from the beginning of the campaign that those spells just won't work in your world. In a session 0 is a good time to bring that up and get player buy-in, not after the first PC death happens. If you want to go full Baldur's Gate 3 honor mode and make every death a true death, that's fine. But some players do get pretty attached to their PCs, so it's only fair for them to know what they're getting into beforehand. Adding these complications should be done in the name of making the raising and resurrecting feel earned. When the half-orc barbarian dies and the cleric says,
"Ah, beans, Bobby's dead. And it's been more than 60 seconds? Don't worry, it's fine. I'll take out my 500 gold piece diamond, I'll smash it, and cast Raise Dead. Okay, so he's back up? Good, now let's loot these monsters."
that feels unsatisfying. You want the party to pump their fists and cheer when Bobby the Barbarian is miraculously returned to the land of the living. Make them feel like they deserve this upward beat when everyone is reunited. So that's all I have to say about that. While you're here, how about a like and subscribe below? Come on, you know you want to. Until next time, this is GM Jim. Now go out there and do dumb stuff to get your PC killed so your party can have a fun side quest to bring you back. Just don't do it too many times or they'll eventually leave your dead corpse to rot on the battlefield. Sorry, Bobby. Better luck next character.